Hey guys, I'm Joe from joecolantonio.com, and today I'd like to show you how to test a web service using HP's new Service Test 11. The first thing we want is to stop the sample application that comes with Service Test. And so what this will do is allow us to have some web services we can use just to test and get a feel for the new functionality in Service Test 11. So the sample application needs to be running, and just jot down this endpoint. In Service Test, let's just create a new test. Let's just point to that WSDL by importing it into Service Test. And once it's imported, on the left-hand side on the toolbox, you'll notice under Web Services, we now have an HP Flights service. And if we expand that, we see all the operations that are associated with that web service. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a flight order. But in order to do that, we need to have a valid flight number. So let's get the get flights operation and drag that onto the Service Test main canvas area. Under the right-hand side, under the property sheet, let's look at the valid inputs we need to put in. So let's enter the values here. And let's run it. Now for the results, on the bottom pane under Output, we can see the request and response passed back and forth from Service Test to the web service and the response back for that. So you can see the request we made, the values we passed, and the response back. Is basically a whole list of valid flight numbers that match the criteria that we passed. So what we want to do is just jot down this flight number. Just recall that. And what we're going to do now is create flight order and drag that onto the main canvas. Once again, click on the inputs, and let's fill out the data here. Okay, now for flight number, rather than enter manual data, what we're going to do is we're actually going to point to the previous get flights request and use a value returned from its response as input for the flight number. So in order to do that, for any of these fields, what you would do is click on the field and click on this little link. That should bring up a select link source. There's a few different things we could choose from, but for this one we'll use previous step. And we'll expand the test flow, and we'll point to the get flights. And for this, I'm just going to right-click on the flight, add an array element, so I can point to the first flight number that was returned. If we look on under the canvas area, we can see now that there's an arrow, and that arrow basically says now that we're pointing to data that's returned from one web service and using it as input in another web service. So let's run this. Awesome, looks like it passed. So let's look at the output. Now notice the values we passed, but also the flight number is 13628. So what's great about that is we didn't manually input it. We just said to Service Test to use the previous value from the get flights response as input. And we can see we get a valid response back from the create flight order and return a total price of $125. So the last thing we want to do is create a checkpoint. And the checkpoint basically is going to validate the response back from a service just to make sure that the expected result that we wanted was actually returned. So go to checkpoints, click on the create flights, and under total price, let's check that off. There's a few values we can select. For this, we're going to do equals, and I'm going to type in the value of 125. Let's fire this off and see what happens. Cool, looks like it passed. So let's look at the result viewer. And if we expand the test flow, locate that checkpoint, we can see that we expected 125 and the actual result was 125. Look at the output, you can see that it actually did return an element of total price of the value of 125. So I think this is really cool with service tests. I think it's really easy. In about 5 minutes, we're able to create a quick test, and I really like it. Tell me what you think. This is my first video also, and hope you enjoyed it.